that. Okay, so good afternoon or good evening to be exact to everybody who are with us today. I'll introduce myself for those who don't know me. My name is Dan Kaufmann. I'm a research assistant professor here at the Department of Neurology. And I have a private practice where I work predominantly with people suffering from migraines and tension type headaches, and I use different emotional related techniques to address the emotional component of migraines, which I think from everything that I've learned, read, and seen with the people I work with is as important as the physical ones. So I do biofeedback and hypnotherapy and a range of other techniques to help people suffering from migraines. And in the headache school, we're giving each and every month at the fourth week of the month, we're giving kind of a workshop, kind of a skills and techniques to work with migraines. And the reason that we decided to do that is because we want the workshop to provide specific skills that are easy to use so people can learn about them and use them from this day onward. You take the skill with you. And so each and every month, we're focusing on a different topic. And so we've done a lot of different things, such as breathing exercises and relaxation and visualization and working with pain and negative emotions, so forth and so on. And what we're going to do today, we're going to be talking about forgiveness. And I'll explain why I think that it's important to talk about forgiveness. But I will say that that's pretty much what we're doing every fourth week of the month. So if you join us, there is no every session of the fourth week is independent, but all of the skills are relevant to the emotional aspects of migraine. So I thought before we actually dive into the presentation of the topic, I really wanted to do a very brief, maybe kind of a 5-minute relaxation, just to get all of us kind of in the mood or in the zone for the presentation. Probably people came from all sorts of things that happened during the day. So I'm just inviting everybody to just sit comfortably, and we can just start with a very, very easy to use, very brief relaxation. Just inviting everybody to adopt a comfortable posture. If you want to lie down, you can lie down, but just sit comfortably. And as you're doing that, I'm inviting you all to just look ahead of you to whatever there is ahead and just focus on one point. If there is a wall, then stare at the wall. Just find one point that you can stare ahead, just not focusing on the screen right now, but just focus on one point and keep your gaze at that point, not too hard, just soft but comfortable. So you can just have your eyes focused on this one point as you're going to keep listening to my voice. And as you're focusing on that one point, keep your eyes on that point for the remainder of the exercise. And as you're doing that, I'm just inviting you to notice, without moving your eyes, notice everything that you can notice on the periphery. What can you notice on your left? What can you notice on your right? Even though you're still focused gently on this one point, what is up? What is down? And just notice all of your peripheral vision, all the things that you can notice in the periphery, just comfortably, as you're comfortably looking at that one point. And as you're doing that, allowing your gaze to softly focus on the point as you're just being more aware now on everything in the periphery of your eyesight. I'm inviting you right now to notice any sounds, maybe sounds in the room besides my voice, and notice what other sounds you can pick up. Maybe further away sounds, maybe people in the other room or outside, maybe cars going by. whatever other sounds you can pick up from the room. Just be aware of any sounds. Maybe there's a radio or a TV in the other room, maybe people talking, whatever you can notice. Just notice that. As you're noticing your periphery, as you're noticing your sounds, now I'm inviting you to notice sensations in your body. And even though some sensations you might not like, I'm inviting you now just to withhold any judgments and just sit with that and just invite the sensations to be there as if you're fully and completely safe. And just notice whatever you're noticing. Maybe notice your feet on the floor, or notice how your clothes feel, or the back, and how the contact that your back is making with the chair. Notice the contact of the chair with your seat. Notice your arms. Notice any sensations. Maybe some sensations are more pleasant, some sensation may not be, but just withhold any judgment. Just let all of that be with the periphery of your eyes and with the sounds and with the sensations. And whenever you're comfortable, just gently inviting you to close your eyes, only when you feel that it's right to do so. And know that if you prefer to keep your eyes open, it's fine to do that as well. But if you decide to close your eyes, just keep them gently closed. And know that you can always open your eyes whenever you want to, and whenever I tell you to open your eyes. And as you're doing that, just allow yourself to sink deeper into this relaxation. Notice everything that you're noticing. Notice as if your awareness has expanded to things that are more than you, like something that is more than you, like this entire room, outside the room. And since it's obvious that you can focus on different things, I'm inviting you right now to just notice your breath. Notice the inhale and the exhale of your breath. I'm wondering, where do you notice your breath most strongly? Maybe you're noticing the air coming in your nostrils or coming down your throat, or your chest expanding or contracting, or maybe all of the above. But maybe choose just one thing and focus on that. And notice how much comfortable you may feel when you just notice your breathing effortlessly, without any effort, just like waves on a seashore. Inhale and exhale, just effortlessly, allowing your full body to relax, be with us. That's right. And whenever you're ready, whenever you choose to, knowing that you can have the sensation of relaxation whenever you choose to, inviting you all at your own pace, whenever you're ready to be in the here and room, in the here and now, in this room, opening your eyes. Maybe taking another breath and be with us, opening your eyes. And maybe wiggling your fingers and toes, maybe stretching a little bit and kind of be ready for a presentation. Just take a minute, just kind of take a minute to notice what you felt, what you didn't feel. I'm gonna start doing those brief exercises each and every time to kind of have a bit of a starting point to get us all kind of forget about our day or whatever happened, or either good or bad, and just kind of have us participate in our workshop today. Okay. So without further ado, I will share my screen And please just give me a thumbs up that you can see my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Good, wonderful, all right. So the topic of what we're going to talk about today is forgiveness, or identifying our grievance story. Now, I just want to say that forgiveness is quite the topic. We will not be able to cover everything. There's a lot to say about it, but at least I'm going to give you some snippets or some things that you can use to start identifying our own grievance story and maybe start working with that. And I'll explain why I think it's important, but this is going to be the topic for us today. But I'm wondering, before I'm going to continue, if some of you might be asking, forgiveness, what, this is headache school, like what is the correlation or connection between forgiveness and migraine and headache? What is the point of all of this? So I just want to start by saying that, as we all know, migraine is a very debilitating disorder that is composed of these recurrent headache attacks and associated symptoms. But it's not just that, because when people experience either chronic migraines or chronic tension type headaches, all of those unanticipated headaches and associated symptoms that are coming at random times that we cannot anticipate that, and they come in all different versions and colors, and they could stay for a long period of time. And those are not comfortable. And a lot of time they can cause us to be very, very angry. Why is it happening to us? It can cause us to feel anxiety. When is the next time that this migraine or headache is going to come? What am I going to do? Sometimes we feel helpless because some of my medication is not going to work. My doctor doesn't know what to do. We might feel hopeless or helpless. That might cause depression. So there is a lot of emotional components to not just the migraine pain, but all of these other associated component, the emotional component. And usually when we have all those stressors accompanied with migraine, that is actually a really, really tremendous burden that migraine has on the person who suffers, but also their surroundings, their family, their friends, and society at large. And even though there's a lot of advancement with tools and techniques and medical research for migraine treatment, up to this point, at least from what I know, there is no one kind of a cure, kind of a magic bullet that can just take it all away. So a good approach to address migraine and all of those other associated symptoms is to use a combined approach, kind of a multidisciplinary approach that would address the physical aspect of migraine and the pain and so forth, but also those cognitive, emotional, and behavioral aspects of migraine that are very important for better management of this disorder. Now, when we talk about that, we know that stress and migraines are interlinked. There is a lot of research that indicate that a lot of people have stress be a cause of initiating migraine or chronifying migraine. Past trauma or things that happened to us that were stressful can affect our experience of migraines. So the thing is that because people that are experiencing and living with a migraine disorder are faced with so many different stressors, all of those stressors can be addressed as a good coping mechanism by using forgiveness of self and forgiveness of others. Now, we can't talk about forgiveness without talking about the grievance story, or what is the grievance story. And so each and every time when we experience life and we cannot successfully deal with getting things that we want, and usually life happens, and a lot of times we don't get what we want. And so when we are stuck, or when we keep ruminating on why is it that we didn't get what we want, in some cases we can form what we call a grievance story. And the more time we spent on dwelling on the loss or the hurt or whatever happened, it's more difficult to break the habit, even though it's doable, but the grievance story becomes more and more pronounced and take effect of our lives. And since we know that stress is very important for migraine, forgiveness is a process that we can actually cope and relieve those sources of stress and relieve all of those grievance story as we're going to start identifying today. And so forgiveness in general, from my experience working with people living with migraine, can be very, very important tool to help people better cope with the stressors and the things that happen to them in their lives as they're living with a migraine disorder. Now, when we talk about the stressors, what kind of stressors do we have? And this is just some of the list, and I'm sure that all of you can find more sources of stress, but just example of sources of stress and how do we address them in terms of forgiveness of self or of others or both. So sometimes, and in a lot of cases when people experience migraine, it is accompanied by the occurrence of childhood adversity, like childhood adverse experiences, which could be either traumatic, physical, emotional, and so forth. And so we can better address those adversary or those things that happen to us by forgiveness of others, or if we need forgiveness of self. Sometimes we have problem in our workplaces when people don't understand us, like, why do you need to take the day off? So what if you have a migraine? Just, take a glass of water, take an aspirin, and go and come to work. Sometimes we have bullying from like stories that I've heard, or harassment, or people discriminate just because some people have migraines. One way of addressing that is to actually accept or forgive those who actually hurt us. Sometimes spouse or family or friends, when they're not supporting us as we want, when they're tired of our migraines, tired of feeling about our migraines, that could also be a source of stress that forgiveness can come into play. Healthcare systems, when people don't understand us, when we think that people fake their migraines, or there's difficult with insurance, or when my doctor is skeptic, or, well, I think you're making it up, it's not as worse as you say, that could cause us to be very angry and frustrated. Sometimes we have sense of shame when we blame ourselves for not being able to do what everybody else does. Like, I remember a client that told me, I just feel I'm not a good mother because I want to participate in my kids' things, and I just can't do that because of migraine. I'm just a bad mother. Or feeling of anger. Why am I having migraines? Why do they not understand me? Why my doctor doesn't understand me? Why do my spouse doesn't understand me? Why my friend all alienating me? All of those sources of stress can be addressed by using forgiveness process. But before we talk about forgiveness and what is forgiveness, I learned that there is a lot of misconceptions of what forgiveness is. And actually, there's a lot of resistance to engaging in forgiveness. And that's, I think, the majority of the time that I talk to people about forgiveness and they were resistant, from my understanding, it was because they were not fully understanding what forgiveness is and what forgiveness is not, because we have all these different ideas about it. So I want to start with what forgiveness is not. Forgiveness is not about condoning unkindness. A lot of people think that, oh, if I forgive, then how he or she treated me, it's okay. No, this is not forgiveness. Forgiveness is not about relieving or relieving other people for their responsibility. Forgiveness is not about forgetting that something painful had happened. It's not about dismissing the hurt or pain or saying that something wasn't painful. This is not forgiveness. Forgiveness is also not excusing bad behavior. If someone behaved poorly or badly, this is important to know, and forgiving them does not mean that we think that their behavior was okay. Forgiveness also doesn't have to be this spiritual experience. I remember that I talked to someone and talked to them about forgiveness, and they told me, well, in order for me to do what you're asking me, I need to be the Dalai Lama. Actually, no, forgiveness is not that much of a spiritual, enlightened kind of a procedure. It actually just requires dedication, and everybody, it's just like a skill, everybody can forgive, and it doesn't matter what the incidents that occurred. Everybody eventually can forgive. They just need to go through the process. Forgiveness is also not about minimizing or denying people's hurt. On the contrary, in order for us to forgive, we first need to acknowledge the fact that we were hurt and our feelings and our emotions are legitimate. It's what we do with them that is important. Forgiveness also doesn't mean reconciling with the offender. If someone hurt me, forgiveness doesn't mean that I'm going to be their best friend or their friend at all. It doesn't even mean that I need to see them. I don't even need to be in touch with them. Forgiveness is a process, as we're going to talk about, is a process about ourselves. It has nothing to do with the other person. And it does not mean that I necessarily need to reconcile. I can if I want to, but I can still be forgiving to someone without ever seeing them or even wanting to see or talk to them ever again. And also, forgiveness doesn't mean that you give up having feelings. Again, on the contrary, it is respecting and appreciating our feelings is what fuels eventually the process of forgiveness. And all of that is taken from the book Forgiveness for Good by Dr. Fred Luskin. He's a wonderful professor at Stanford University. He created the forgiveness process, and he was actually the one that certified me to give forgiveness workshops here in Salt Lake City. So we talked about what forgiveness isn't. So what is forgiveness? Forgiveness is actually the sense of peace that we feel when we just let go of all of those grievance stories that were unresolved for us. When we hold on to the story of hurt and betrayal or whatever that may be, or the wrong that had happened to us, forgiveness is the ability to have peace within with all of those stories. The most important thing is that forgiveness is for you. It has nothing to do with anybody else, anybody that hurt you, or anybody beside yourself. Forgiveness is a process that you do for you, not for other people. It has nothing to do with them. And it is about taking back your power of managing your emotion and your life without giving the power to someone else to rule your emotions. Forgiveness is taking responsibility for the way we feel, not the way someone else made us or we think made us feel. Forgiveness is about healing. It's about our healing and not about the person that hurt us. And I always say that, how fair is it that so-and-so hurt me at the age of, I don't know, and who knows where they are at that point, but I'm the one left with the anger. How fair is that? Forgiveness is about doing the process to actually relieve those stories. Forgiveness is a skill, as I mentioned. Everybody can do it. It's not something out of the world. It's something we all can do if we set our minds to it. Forgiveness helps us take control over our feelings and move away from hurt to peace. Forgiveness can help us improve our mental and physical health, and there's research about that I'm going to be talking about really briefly. And it is about being the hero of our lives, not just being the victim of what someone did to us or something that happened to us. And it is also the focus of forgiveness is about the now, not about what happened, not about the past, not about previous incidences. It's about what are we doing about that now, and how do I want to manage that into the future, because the power that we have is in the present moment. So this is what forgiveness and what forgiveness is not. And I'm just going to say briefly that there's a lot of studies that have been done about forgiveness, about people that use forgiveness. And I'm not going to talk too much about it. I will say that forgiveness in general was reported that people that were engaged in that process actively on a constant basis report having fewer health problems and much more satisfaction in life. When we are engaging in forgiveness, it does cause us to be much more relaxed. It does cause stress reduction and does help with managing our stress symptoms. When we're not able to forgive, it has been shown to be a risk factor for several conditions. One of them are heart problems, but also there are other conditions. And also, when people were interviewed and they reported that eventually they were able to forgive a perpetrator or offender, they did say that their life dramatically improved in a lot of ways. And there's a lot of different categories of health issues that were improved after people were able to release and forgive. And I'm assuming that the result that when we are not forgiving, when we keep the hurt and the anger, it's like when we have these emotions that are bottled up inside us, those are a source of stress. And a source of stress might not be a good thing, especially if we're suffering from chronic pain or migraine in particular. So now I've talked a lot, and now we're let's move on to something else. And I'm going to ask all of you to take a piece of paper and a pen, and I would like you to write a list and briefly describe all the things that bothered you and are still bothering you in your life. I want to emphasize you will not be asked to share it. It's your own list. You can write whatever you want. I'm just guiding you through identifying grievances. So just go ahead. Let's take about 5 to 10 minutes. Go ahead, make a list, and really briefly describe those things that bothered you and still bother you in your life. Let's take about 5 minutes and we see how we're doing. And Abby, you could pause the recording right now. Turn on the, okay. Now, after you've made a list, I'm inviting you to look at your list, and I'm going to ask you several questions. And if that question is right, is correct, put a circle or a dot next to each of your statements. So for example, I'm going to ask you, I've told this story more than twice to the same person. If this is true, look at each of the lists that you made. If each and every of those things true, put a mark like a circle or some dot next to it. I've told the story more than twice to the same person. Okay. Next, I replay the story more than 2 times in a given day in my mind. If that's true, again, put a mark or a circle next to each item of your list. I find myself speaking to the person who hurt me even when they are not there. If that's true, put a mark or a circle next to the item on your list. Next, I made a commitment to myself to tell the story without feeling upset, and then I get upset. If that's true, put a mark next to that item that this is true. Next, the person who hurt me is the main character in this story. If that's true, put a mark. The story reminds me of other painful things that have happened in my life. That's true. Go ahead, put a mark next to the things on your list that correspond to that statement. The story focuses primarily on my pain and what I have lost. If that's true, put a mark. Circle the villain or villains, which is the person or people that hurt me, in each of those stories, in each of the stories on the list. I made a commitment to myself not to tell the story again, and then I told it again. If that's true, put a mark. I seem to find other people with a similar story. If it's true, put a mark. The story has stayed the same over time. That's true. Just put a mark. Oops, sorry. So now, after you look at all of your stories, see if any of your items in your list have more than 5 marks or circles. Who in here, with a raise of hands, have at least one on their list with more than 5? Raise your hands. Okay. If you have 5 or more in your list, you have a grievance story. So let's take a look at a grievance story. Grievance story emerges when we have two things that coincide. It's like something that happened in our lives that we didn't want to happen, and we feel pain about it. And we deal with this problem or pain by thinking about it too much. And sometimes it's because we didn't have enough or the emotional skills, we deal with the pain. Now, when we have those grievance stories and we keep replaying it in our minds over and over, eventually it can become suffering. And the way that it can become suffering is that when we take what happened, when we take the offense personally, and a lot of time too personally. Also, we blame the offender for how we feel or how they made us feel. And also importantly, we keep replaying and ruminating on that situation, turning it into a story, which is our grievance story. When we do any of that, we actually formulate a grievance story. And when we have a grievance story, it's important to know about it so we can start acting upon it to release it. One of the ways to release it that we're going to do next, I'm inviting you now to take, let's take about 15 minutes, and then we'll talk about it. Instead of 20 minutes, I would like for you to choose one item on your list and write a letter right now. Take 15 minutes. I'm inviting you to write constantly, without too much stress, but just keep the writing. Don't analyze. There's no need to say, oh, I'm feeling this because, or just pour it out. However, I would like you to be clear about your emotions. Write down how that incident made you feel. What were the specific emotions? What were the specific hurt? And be clear about what are the actions that were done that were wrong. Go ahead, write it. Now also, no filters. I'm not going to ask you to read it. I'm not going to ask you to share it. So take your time and be free. Go ahead, take about, let's do 15 minutes. Write it down, and we're going to discuss it afterwards. We'll take 10 to 15 because we want to be on time. So go ahead, write it down. Oh, an important thing, choose something mild to medium because it's a new skill. Don't take something, the most horrible thing that happened that is the most difficult for you. Take something lighter, like a misunderstanding or someone on the road that cut you, or something of that nature that is not the most horrible, so you can understand the process, and then we can talk about it. So please really work on something mild to medium minus as a beginning point. Go ahead, 10 to 15 minutes.